Is your family farm's future uncertain? Silence may be the biggest risk of all. Discover how open conversations and gradual planning can secure your legacy and empower the next generation. Don't wait. Start the dialogue today. Learn more and download a transition planning checklist at fcc.ca/knowledge.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio.
Hello and welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio Channel 147, Sirius XM. It is Tuesday, September 23rd, and I am your host, Lyndsey Smith. Yeah, we're sort of having a throwback to Tuesdays with Lyndsey, but I've decided that we're going to have Agronomic Tuesday, because why not? So yesterday, Sean Haney hosted the show, and now, today, it's my turn. So there you go. So if you feel like your days are all mixed up, hey, join the club. Me too. On today's show, got a great lineup. Peter Johnson will join me, of course. We've got many things to unpack, of course. There's been all sorts of things happening with harvest, or perhaps more to the point, things getting in the way of harvest. So my friends in Manitoba, I'm definitely feeling you. Way too much rain at the worst time. Of course, especially it does add insult to injury, and the same thing's happening here in Ontario. Perhaps not as wet that it's fully interfering with harvest, but it's just really poorly timed. But definitely huge downpours in parts of the prairies that have put harvest on hold. I know some people in Saskatchewan were on like a 10-day rain delay. Here in Ontario, we had an interesting weekend in the east, in the Ottawa Valley where I am. We did have a light frost, so not super, super cold, but yes, it did dip below the 0 mark for both Friday and Saturday night. And then Sunday, and this is wild, was like 26 degrees Celsius. So it was a beautiful day. And I got to tell you, I feel like some of these crops might feel a little confused given the sort of whiplash of weather that they've been experiencing. Now, to the good, for those of you getting winter wheat in, or maybe you put in a cover crop a few weeks ago, some much needed moisture falling across many parts of Ontario. It is, of course, interrupting harvest for some. And again, for some, not a great harvest. We definitely are getting reports of, many farmers in a crop insurance situation, some crops having to be destroyed so soybeans, you have to destroy them, in order to get a winter wheat crop in. So not great. It's a pretty stressful one all around for many. And that is one of the things we're going to talk about on today's show. So after we hear from Pete Johnson, and he's got lots to talk about, including starter fertilizer for that wheat, some sulfur on soybean updates, and of course, some cover crop talk as well. But we're also going to hear from Leta LaRush with BASF and Merle Massie, who's the executive director of the Dumar Ag Foundation. They're going to join me later in the show to talk about the Talk It Out Tag initiative that is launching October 1. So October is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so the Dumar Ag Foundation, in conjunction with BASF, is launching Talk It Out Tag. You're going to learn all about what that is, how to get involved later in the show. And then to round out the program, I've got, have you heard of the 4 R's of nutrient management? Of course you have. But have you heard about the 5 R's of tillage? Because, of course, the tillage guys couldn't be left out of this conversation. So my colleague Bern Tobin has got a soil school episode with Jim Boak and Ian MacDonald, and they're going to unpack what exactly are the 5 R's of tillage. One of the things, of course, that I will chat about with Wheat Pete, I did mention we're going to talk starter phosphorus. I did want to send a shout out. Last night, hosted the Agronomist, fantastic show, all about phosphorus, and specifically phosphorus use efficiency and that economic lens we have to put on, of course, every input dollar we're spending right now. And phosphorus is one of those ones that, as a nutrient, we know that we can draw down levels, we can sort of store some in the soil, or we can just put back in potentially what we're using. But all of that comes down to a few things. It's understanding how phosphorus is held and used in the soil, how it moves, and of course the forms that we're adding to the soil, and how we can make sure that we actually get the crop use out of what we apply. So fantastic discussion. Head on over to our YouTube channel. You can just search The Agronomist. It'll give you that episode and many more. Or you can head on over to RealAgriculture.com as well and check it out. Fantastic discussion. Okay, I've got to take a quick break. I'll be back with Peter Repeat Johnson right after this.
Time for a product spotlight with Jared Vaness, National Technical Service Manager with BASF Canada. We're going to talk about bringing to the market Liberty Amp. How did you identify the need?
When I started my career, 2001, we were looking at improving Liberty. This has been a need and an ask from the market for nearing 25, 26 years. It's a bulky product today, Liberty 150 is. There was always a need or an ask to get it more concentrated, but not lose efficacy. We finally got there in time for the 2026 field season. What we continually ran into and why it took as long as it did is we will not sacrifice on efficacy. At the same time, it's going to be 20% higher in concentration and maintain that superior weed control for consistency and dependability in the field, which is critical. Essentially, get more performance per drop. You reduce the number of totes and drums, and it helps from that logistical standpoint.
If somebody wants more information on the launch of Liberty Amp, where do they go?
agsolutions.ca.
Important update from FMC. Precision Pack DB878 Pro herbicide is now registered for use in front of oats, along with spring wheat, durum, winter wheat, and barley. DB878 Pro herbicide delivers proven kochia control, including herbicide-resistant biotypes, plus extended control of cleavers, dandelion, narrow-leaved hawksbeard, and volunteer canola. And with Precision Pack herbicide customization, you get the acres you need. No leftovers, no wasted time. See your local participating retailer today. Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. It is Tuesday, but we're making it Agronomic Tuesday because I can. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and with deep roots in agriculture, MMP helps farm businesses make confident financial decisions. From planning to growth, their advisors are here to support your success. Learn more at mmp.ca. We bring in now our resident agronomist. It is Peter Repeat Johnson. Pete, how are you? You had a late night last night.
Oh, it wasn't all that late, but yeah, later than some nights for sure at the University of Guelph, speaking to the University of Guelph Soil and Crop Club. So that's students, and one of their requests last night was, hey, the 29's in the room, right? We need a representative on the soil and crop executive. So talk amongst yourselves and somebody step up. And I'm going, yes, that it's such a vibrant club. And I'm so just excited and enthralled with the students in agriculture at Guelph right now. It just sounds like they are keen and enthusiastic and love agriculture. And we got to the meeting a little bit early, and the door wasn't unlocked yet for the room that we were going into. There was a bunch of people in the hallway, and as soon as we got there, they started talking to me and asking me questions and interacting with me. And I'm just going like, oh, Lyndsey, life doesn't get much better than this.
It's pretty great. So shout out to all of the University of Guelph Soil and Crop Club students. Now, it did mean you missed the agronomist, though. So I will forgive them that because we can still talk about phosphorus today on the show. But you did miss a good one. So let's talk about that. It was all about phosphorus use efficiency, and that does dovetail in quite nicely to some of the key agronomic questions happening this week, one of which, of course, is how much phosphorus am I putting down with the seed? Or wait, to make Pete's head really spin, do I need to put down phosphorus with my wheat seed?
Yeah, and so, Lyndsey, just as a note, I did mention to them that I had to miss the agronomist to go and speak to the club, but you can't be two places at once. And we did have a great discussion there. One of the things that I really did push them on before we go to phosphorus, if I can, is my question was, so you're standing in the lineup at Tim Hortons and the person behind you or in front of you says, those farmers, glyphosate is killing us. What do you do? And the immediate reaction was, you say nothing. And I'm going, no, because these are the people that are going to represent agriculture moving forward. And we have to get our message out. We have to interact with people and help them understand. So my answer was engage, engage, engage. Number one thing you have to do is say, yes, I understand your concerns. Because if you just start off with, that's wrong, that's just absolutely wrong, then you've lost them right out the gate. But you have to engage with them, and then you have to make it personal. And there's different ways to do that. We don't need to delve into that. But wow, like too many people in agriculture, and not everyone, but too many people just almost back away rather than engage in that discussion because they're afraid of conflict. And none of us like conflict. But you can't turn it into a conflict. You need that discussion. So that was one of my notes to the budding new agriculturalists here in Ontario and across North America. We must engage.
All right. I agree. And absolutely fantastic advice. You start with, that is a concern. Let's unpack it. It's not a you're wrong or you're an idiot or how could you think that? It's, I hear that you've got a concern. Let's talk about it. And that really is, it opens the door to a conversation versus a lecture, because nobody wants a lecture about how they're wrong, especially me.
Well, and even last night, I got them to engage. Like, it was fun. They had questions, they had comments. It was just a fun, really fun session. So phosphorus, we'll move back to phosphorus because lots of questions coming in. And I am astounded with how many growers that reach out to me and say, what do I need for a starter ahead of my wheat crop? And all too often they say, I don't have fertilizer capability on the drill, which means I'm just going to broadcast. And so, Lyndsey, from last night, what would Andrew Margineau say about broadcast phosphorus?
Well, first of all, he'd say, no, get it in the ground. So maybe it's time you update your equipment or your capabilities. But barring that, if you are going to broadcast, at the very least, make sure you work it in. Because one of the biggest risks of phosphorus loss, because we know phosphorus isn't super mobile, let's say, but it moves with soil, it'll move with runoff. And so if you've got phosphorus sitting on the surface, it potentially could move and end up in waterways, and that's all bad, to quote Wheat Pete.
Yes. And so, I mean, I am going to watch that session from last night because it has to be an amazing session with those two speakers. But I will add that here's one of the dilemmas in wheat production when you can't put it with the seed in the ground, is that most of us like to no-till our winter wheat. We don't want to have to work that wheat ground because there's very little residue there. It's an added cost to run across it. We don't see very much yield increase, if any yield increase, under the dry soil conditions that we've had. And if I work it, and we've had some rain, so this is not as big a concern now, but some areas still very little rain. Mm-hmm. If you do work it, to work the phosphorus in, you often give away some of that moisture that you need to get that wheat germinated. So get it in the ground, but my preference is always with the seed. If you're running a disc style drill and you're no-tilling, there's no way to get it in the ground. That you just can't, other than if you blend it with the seed. And that is an option that we've talked about lots in the past. Anyway, so here's the other part of this starter discussion is, number one, we can't put it in the ground. And number two, so I always broadcast 158 pounds per acre of potash and 100 pounds of MAP. And I'm just wondering if I should add any sulfur and micros. Do I need micros on that starter blend? And Lyndsey, I just go, have you been listening? So there's no negative to adding potash to your starter blend on winter wheat if you're broadcasting, but there's also no benefit. Our data is really clear on that. winter wheat is almost non-responsive to potash. And so potash is expensive right now. And at some point we have to maintain that soil fertility level. But you could take a chance on potash being cheaper next summer after your winter wheat crop comes off and broadcast potash there to maintain your soil test fertility levels, because you're going to get 0 bushel per acre yield gain from having that potash in the starter blend going across the field. If it saves you a trip next summer, okay. But there's just no yield gain. And I would much rather, because there are 3 things that are important to wheat planting in the fall. And those 3 things are phosphorus, phosphorus, and phosphorus. So take that money you were going to spend on potash and spend it on more phosphorus, because we need 4 times the amount of phosphorus broadcast to equal anywhere close to what we could get with 1/4 of that amount seed placed. So to get good response to starter phosphorus on wheat as a broadcast, we really have to get enough rate there. So this whole thought process about starter phosphorus or starters on wheat period, it really does come down to the phosphorus and the rate that you apply, and whether you put it with the seed or you're just broadcast. And then the other question mark becomes sulfur. Mm-hmm. And that we can chat about sulfur because it's a little bit up in the air. But when it comes to micronutrients, putting them with the seed is almost always 0 benefit. So manganese is the big nutrient from a micronutrient standpoint on winter wheat, and as soon as you put it in the soil, it ties up with the soil and is unavailable. So if you need manganese, it almost has to be a foliar application.
Well, and I would also preface all of this with, are you guessing or did you do a soil test? And then I will back it up, and this is, as we just touched on, people don't like being lectured to. Here's my little lecture. Over time, maybe it's worth looking into the next time you buy a piece of equipment to put seed in the ground, it has the capability of putting some seed placed fruit down. I'm just going to put it out there because, as you said, 4 times more effective with the seed is a great way to look at it. Okay, so if anyone's got any questions for Pete on that one, because it does seem a popular thing that you're going to talk about a lot in the next few weeks, Wheat Pete's Word goes every Wednesday. Give him a call, drop him an email, send him a tweet. And ask your question there. He can go over it again. Okay. So we're going to actually, let's end it there for now. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more on RealAg Radio with Wheat Pete here on this Agronomic Tuesday right after this.
Anniversaries are a time of reflection, celebration, and connection. 10 years ago, G3 set out with a vision to build something better for Canadian grain farmers. And you joined us on that journey to launch a new national network. Thank you for the relationships that made it possible. A decade of growth, a decade of connections, and more in decades to come. Connect with your farm business representative or find your closest elevator at g3smarter.ca.
We have the financial tool you're looking for this harvest. An APP cash advance from Canadian Canola Growers Association offers short-term farm financing that gives you the flexibility to sell your inventory when the time and price are best for you. Borrow at a low interest rate of 0.25% below prime with your first $250,000 interest-free. Apply on over 50 commodities. Call our experienced team or visit ccga.ca. Cash advances are made under the Government of Canada's Advance Payments Program.
Built on over 100 years of seed innovation and unwavering commitment to farmers, Pioneer 100 Series canola hybrids deliver a step change in yield performance and agronomic traits. This isn't just better canola, it's different canola. Pioneer 100 Series. Contact your local Pioneer sales representative or visit pioneer.com/100 series to learn more today.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and this segment brought to you by POGA. Don't miss the Prairie Oak Growers AGM Wednesday, December 3rd in Saskatoon. A full day of expert speakers, research and insights, capped off with keynote Simon Keith and evening entertainment by YouTube sensation the Peterson Farm Brothers. Day passes start at $40. Register today at poga.ca. That's poga.ca. All right, bringing them back in. It's Peter Wheat Pete Johnson. And Pete, later in the show, we're going to talk about the Talk It Out Tag game that Dumar Ag is launching October 1. Pete, are you going to participate?
Absolutely. Mental health is so critical in agriculture. And Lyndsey, there are places in Ontario right now where growers are rolling down soybeans because they're so droughted that there's not enough yield there to pay for the combining only. Mm-hmm. And so Agricor has released them. They're rolling them down so that they can plant wheat into them. They have to destroy them first. And the stress level of the amount of inputs you put into that, and prices are low, and lots of us have low yields, and thank goodness for Agricor. As Warren Schneckenberger would say, man, whatever it costs to have that crop insurance program, that production insurance program, it's cheap. But still, the stress level that farmers endure is just incredible. So Talk It Out Tag is just a fun way to kind of walk through a bunch of thought processes around that. And I believe I'm October the 15th is my date.
Yes, I think you are. And so everyone hang around. After this segment, you're going to hear all about this game and this idea of encouraging all of us here within agriculture to answer a question, ask a question, and then tag the next person. So we'll be talking about that later. And Pete, I know the team at Dumar Ag is super excited. You're going to participate. Watch Real Agriculture's Instagram for that. It'll, of course, go across all social, but I think we're using Instagram as sort of the launch point. And on that note of the harvest stress, Pete, here we sit, a bit of moisture having fallen in many areas of the province, but as you said, it's harvest now. It's too late. In some ways, I'll be honest, for our cover crops, it's great. For the wheat crop, it's great. But for corn and beans, not so great. Two things I want to talk about. First off, what you're hearing on harvest, of course, and why perhaps rainfall. Let's start there maybe. Why is this rainfall maybe not having the impact of increasing the moisture on some of these crops that are ready to come off more than we maybe expect?
Yeah, so let's start with yield, Lyndsey, because yields it really drives home that good soil. There's an old adage that says you cannot pay too much for good soil, and you always pay too much for a poor land or a poor farm. And so I have a grower that I talk to not all that frequently, but he had almost like very dry July, August, September, but he's got a 30-acre pet field. And that 30-acre pet field always does super well. And this year, the soybeans with almost zero moisture yielded 80 bushels per acre, 80 bushels per acre. And so it all comes down to how much water holding capacity the subsoil has. And in the UK, they want their wheat to root 2 meters deep. That's 6.6 feet for the people who aren't metricized. We generally think that wheat roots would go a meter deep, maybe 1.1 meters. They get them to 2 meters deep to pull that moisture out. And so high yields this year were really quite possible when we go into Elgin County, which looks like it is the Cinderella zone this year. Some growers there telling me best silage ever, over 30 tons per acre. And so where the moisture fell, we have awesome yields. Where the moisture did not fall, it ranges from, as I said, zero yield to 50% of yield to, we're off by 10 bushels per acre on soybeans. But there's nobody that is really saying, yeah, this is a great year from a yield standpoint.
Now, So we had, Pete, and I feel like you didn't believe me when I told you, but we had frost Friday and Saturday night, which feels very early. It wasn't a super hard frost as far as the temperature, but it was a very long cold night, and 2 nights in a row. And I will tell you the corn that was still green, because there was certainly some that had already very much started to mature and dry down, but lots of fields that were still, pretty green for a dry year, that are now, of course, toasted. What impact does a frost like that have on a crop that hasn't black layered yet?
And so, Lyndsey, if we're at September what would that have been, the 18th or the 19th or 20th?
Yeah,
20th. If you're at September 20th and all you do is take the leaves off, and so your long, not that cold period, the corn leaves are getting tired. Mm-hmm. They've been there for quite some time, and they're starting to wind down that photosynthetic activity. They'd still help, but with any crop, and corn in particular, we get a lot of relocation, a lot of remobilization. That's the word I'm looking for. Remobilization of the nutrients in the stalk. And those nutrients are what end up filling the last part of the starch in the cob. And the really high yield corn growers would say green to the ground at harvest. And that is the way you get, 600 bushel corn. But in our environment where, if you're over 200, if you can hit 250, that's amazing. Up where you are, Lyndsey, they probably, 220 is a really good crop. We don't manage to keep it green to the ground. So losing those leaves and the amount of photosynthate that they would produce before black layer is very little impact. Did it take off 1%, 2% of your yield? Maybe, but it didn't take away 10% unless it was a super late, super long hybrid. And so I'm not very concerned about losing those leaves. Why didn't your cover crops, why didn't some of the other crops get affected as much? Well, first off, some of them are much more cold tolerant than corn, but they're also trying to photosynthesize. Their leaves aren't tired. They're young. They're trying to build a plant because they're annual crops, and they have to build that crop to make seed to procreate. So they're still going flat out, and they just simply are more tolerant of those cold temperatures. So not very concerned about the corn crop. Glad it didn't get that cold. I absolutely believe that you had frost. Last night at the meeting with the students, there was some of them that said in Grey County they also had frost that took the leaves off corn. So not ideal, but not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, and actually, can we touch on that just briefly? On the cover crop side, I do know several growers who did put in a cover even just in the last 2 weeks. Realistically, most of the species, and as you point out, these are plants that are actively trying to reach reproductive stage. So they're in a very different sort of life cycle than our crops that are, of course, drying down and reaching maturity. Which ones are the most impacted by frost, if I've got them in the mix? Because I've got, oats and peas and brassicas. Which ones do get most impacted by frost if we had a hard frost?
So if you have a hard frost, the ones that are really sensitive are things like buckwheat. So some growers will put buckwheat in, phacelia. Like there are some of those warm season crops that really get hammered. The crops that you mentioned, so the oat crop, once the oat crop is growing, it will take -9 Celsius.
It was not that cold.
Yeah, your brassicas are in that same game. I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head. I think it's like -7. But all of those species that we plant as a cover crop in the fall, or I shouldn't say all, certainly the main ones that we plant do take some pretty cold temperatures to kill them. And that's actually why sometimes the stupid oats overwinter. We don't want them to overwinter, but right. If it doesn't get to -9 and they get covered by a blanket of snow, and that blanket of snow keeps it at, +1, 0, kind of in that range all winter, then the snow goes away and they don't get -9 in the spring. Stupid things are still there next spring, and now I got to take them out with glyphosate to go plant my crop. So a lot of crops are quite tolerant And -9 is typically a temperature that will take almost everything else out that we would look at as an annual crop. Corn, on the other hand, your corn crop at this stage of the year, -1 will pretty much be enough to take those leaves off. And especially if it was, even -1 for 8 hours or 6 hours, or even if you got to -0.5 for that long, it's the length of time also matters.
Mm-hmm. I will say, Pete, it does this year here in Ontario. And I mean, maybe we were due, or maybe as you might point out, maybe I'm not living right, but it hasn't been a great year for a lot of things because we had this frost and then now we've got, no word of a lie, nighttime temps of 13 to 14 and daytime highs of 22 to 23. It's gorgeous. It's like the most perfect, beautiful weather.
Yeah. And so it's good that your covers didn't get frozen off because now they're still going gangbusters, and those woolly things that you're going to put on them in a little while are just going to love it.
Yeah, it's true. And I will say, the ewes are moving from the solar site. They're going out on covers, this week, and our ram lambs moved to so we put in a foraged turnip oat pea mix, July 22nd or 23rd, and they moved into it yesterday. So, this rain is well timed, and we're going to look like geniuses if it works out, Pete. But if it gets really cold, not so much. Okay, so there you go. Let's leave it there for now. I do want to talk about, we have just a little bit of time left. What about sulfur on soybeans? Byrne's been doing a great job tackling this in the soybean school series. It's one of those questions. I know Horse Spawner has got some work on some soils where we get a response. What are the questions around sulfur on soybeans?
So, I mean, I'm really anxious to see the data from this year, Lyndsey. I have one plot that came back on a sandy loam soil with some manure in the history. And so you would say sand soil should see response, but manure history, probably not. But they got 4.4 bushel per acre yield increase to applying sulfur on their soybeans this year. So not the 20 bushels that some people talk about, but still highly economical at that rate. We've seen visual responses on heavy clay soils. We have not seen, I had a sulfur trial on my own farm. I saw the big 0. And I put sulfur on my corn crop before I planted the soys. It's a silt loam soil. And so we don't get that response, even though the beans were planted in late April. So I think the story on sulfur is still being written, but it's sand soils, it's heavy clay soils, and it might be in situations where you have not applied much sulfur to the previous crop.
Okay. We are out of time. Pete, thank you so much. I recommend go check out the Agronomist replay from last night. So it's on YouTube. It's on realagriculture.com/agronomist. And if you've got feedback, I look forward to hearing it tomorrow on Wheat Pete's Word. So everybody out there, download the podcast. It's on Spotify. It's at realagriculture.com or wheatpete.com. Wheat Pete has his own website, everybody. Go check it out. All right, Pete, have a wonderful Tuesday. Thank you so much.
You as well, Lyndsey. Have a great day.
All right. We'll be back with more RealAg Radio and that Talk It Out tag right after this.
Is your family farm's future uncertain? Silence might be the biggest risk of all. Discover how open conversations and gradual planning can secure your legacy and empower the next generation. Don't wait. Start the dialogue today. Learn more and download a transition planning checklist, your guide to farm succession planning at fcc.ca/knowledge.
Whether you're running a farm operation, in a career within an organization, starting your own business, looking for your dream job, operating a company in agri-food, or want to hone your overall life skills, this conference is for you. Celebrating over 10 years of bringing women in ag and food together, join the Advancing Women Conference in Niagara Falls on November 23rd, 24th, and 25th. Visit advancingwomenconference.ca for more information and to register. Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and joining me now, it's time for just a really exciting conversation that I'm looking forward to. We've got World Mental Health Awareness Month coming up in October, and we need to be ready. And there are some very cool ways that we're going to be ready to bring mental health awareness to the agriculture sector. Joining me now, Dr. Merle Massie with the Do More Ag Foundation and Leta LaRush with BASF. Leta, I'll start with you. Today we're going to talk about the Talk It Out tag that the Do More Ag Foundation is going to be kicking off October 1. From your perspective, why is something like this initiative so important for the sector?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Lyndsey, and really good to have the opportunity to talk about such an important topic. And, from BASF's perspective and as industry leaders, our goal with participating in this campaign is really just to create a space for us as an industry to be able to have authentic and meaningful conversations and really break some of the stigma around mental health and ag. We really see our role as, not just being a crop inputs and seed provider, but really help building community in agriculture. And I think in order to have a successful agriculture community, we also need to be able to talk openly about mental health and support our customers and our industry in this area. So really excited to be here today. I brought my cards so we can talk it out after. But yeah, that's why we're here.
Right. Okay. And so, Merle, I'll bring you into this conversation as well about these cards. This isn't the first year for Talk It Out Tag, but it really took off last year, and so we're hoping to make a really big splash with it this year. Tell me about sort of how this came to be, and then we'll dive into what this all will look like in October.
Absolutely. Well, so the Do More Ag Foundation developed our Talk It Out tag cards. So there's a box with 150 cards in there, and they're designed to generate discussion and for people to find a better way to create a sense of connection with one another. And BASF came to us last year and said, those cards are amazing. Let's set up a tag. And so last year, this was just before I joined the foundation as the executive director. And so throughout October last year, for World Mental Health Month, BASF and Do More Ag and a few others started to go online, take a video, pull a card, read the card, answer the card, and then tag someone else, either across BASF and Do More Ag. And it really took off, particularly within BASF. It's amazing to watch a strong industry leader like BASF standing up and saying, this is important. We want to be not just seen, but to be in the lead of this because it matters. Not just across the industry for BASF itself. It was phenomenal.
And so this year, really sort of taking that success from last year, leveraging it for this year. I know the RealAg team is going to be, of course, involved in this. Leta, how does it start? Are you going to be kicking this off? Is this sort of going out to everybody? How do you encourage people to participate in this Talk It Out tag?
Yeah, so, anyone can participate. It doesn't need to start with me. I actually think it was one of my colleagues on our leadership team who kicked it off last year. And how it essentially works is we create an opportunity for people either online or by purchasing the cards to pick a card and then respond to that story and record a short video of themselves. And there we go. I think Merle's going to set me up here. But, record a video just responding to whatever that question is. And then they have the opportunity to tag someone else in the industry to either answer that same question or pull a different card. And the questions are they could be as simple as, what's something that you've learned working in the agriculture industry? Or how do you cope with stress? So it's really just to facilitate a dialogue, to promote mental health and well-being within our industry.
So, Merle, from that perspective, do you want people to think about, someone they think would be really great at answering this question, someone they know will pass it on? What do you hope or what guidelines would you give somebody who wants to participate?
I'd love to have lots of people participate. And we do have sort of an official tag kind of tree that's going to be going across the month just to make sure that, everything gets going and not everybody does their video on day one and then there's nothing else happening across the whole month, because we want to make sure that people are thinking about this and paying attention to it, not even just across October, but even beyond that. But in terms of who is a good person, this is actually a really good opportunity as we move more digitally and online, I know that I'm finding that this has been a really good opportunity for me to practice my skills in, turning the camera on myself, being real, sharing who I am out right across Canada, because that sense of connection is what really matters. And it's what really drives the conversation. And so that's what we're looking for. So use this as an opportunity to practice. Or if you're an old hand, by all means, jump in. And the thing is people could jump in at any point, because we do have the cards, physical cards, so you can order those from the Do More Ag Foundation, but we have put a selection of cards online as well. So if you check out the Do More Ag website, we do have a selection of cards on the website, and we'll be changing those up across the month as well, just to make sure that the content is fresh. But each of those questions is set that people are going to answer them in different ways depending on their own situation. And so I think it's going to be a great opportunity to share a little bit about who we each of us are and to connect just that bit more.
Absolutely. Now, and Leta, that these cards, there are physical cards, you can order them. And yes, it's a great fit for the month of October and for this. But of course, how else do you think we could see these cards being used in other businesses, organizations, farms outside of just this month or just this campaign?
Yeah, it's great. So I keep them in my office, as you can see, and they're also just really great conversation starters as you're working to maybe get to know your colleagues or industry partners a bit better, right? So I could, certainly see a scenario where someone's just picking up one of these cards as part of their, regular check-ins with someone that they're working with, just a way to maybe have an icebreaker or start a conversation. I really think that the foundation's done a great job with, and I think you alluded to this, Merle, the way they've developed the questions is you could take it in a lot of different directions. And at the end of the day, they really just create a safe and open space for, conversations and opportunities for people to share their personal experience. It could be some of their challenges with mental health. It could also just be some of the ways that, they're thriving and maintaining, a healthy perspective. So I don't think it has to be limited to the month of October. They're a really fun way to get to know each other better and build your relationships.
Lyndsey, if I could just add in and share, I heard about a farm that pulls them every morning as part of their toolbox talk first thing. They kind of have a little safety moment and a little mental health connection moment. And so they will often use the cards there. And they have reported back to the Do More Agriculture Foundation that it's really created an interesting social sense amongst them and a higher sense of connection. So there's another way that we've seen farms use the cards and being used right across the industry, exactly what Leta said.
Mm-hmm. I can absolutely see that, of where sometimes I think the toughest thing is just knowing what to ask or what to say. And it really just gives you, and if you pull a card and you're like, not feeling that one today, there's more. Just pull a new one and do something else. And so I'm looking forward to doing this as well. And great to hear that there'll be new ones online. So if you don't have the physical cards, or everybody keep watch out on Instagram, on those different social accounts, watch for that hashtag. Now, before, of course, I let the two of you go, what is the website where we can find those cards, and what is the hashtag we should be using when we want to create this link between all of these people? Leta, maybe I'll ask you for the hashtag, and then Merle, if you want to share the website.
No worries. It's pretty straightforward. It's #TalkItOutTag.
All right. That is it. All right. And where can people go to find these cards, either to order or to ask a question from online?
www.domore.ag and look for Talk It Out.
Yes, it was very easy to find. I did it just before we went live here. So there you go. All right. Thank you, ladies, so much. This is super exciting. We'll be watching for the launch on October 1. And I encourage all of our audience to participate and watch for that. So thank you both very much.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Lyndsey.
Thanks, Lyndsey.
All right. We'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Ever hear that good things come to those who wait? Well, we think it's more like great rewards come to those who book their Invigor hybrid canola early. Through the Invigor Book and Buy Grower program, you could earn a $30 per bag rebate when you book all your Invigor needs by November 14th. Speak with your local retailer about eligible hybrids. Terms and conditions apply. Book early. Come out ahead.
Dairy Producers Wanted for the first American Dairy Expo, November 5th and 6th at the Champlain Valley Exposition in Vermont. Grab a free breakfast, tour the 200 Company Dairy Innovation Trade Show, meet Olympian and dairy producer El St. Pierre, and take in the Dairy Delivers classroom. November 5th is Dairy Fest at 4 p.m. featuring a massive dairy buffet, live entertainment, and industry networking. Full details, discount coupon, and pre-expo tickets available at AmericanDairyExpo.com.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. Do you want to diversify your marketing plan? Try My Grain Exchange's online marketplace. List your grain and connect directly with CGC licensed and verified local buyers. And right now, farmers pay no seller fees on sales before October 31st. MyGrainExchange.com. More buyers, more bids, more ways to sell your grain. We go now to a conversation from the Soil School, and this is with Ian MacDonlad and Jim Boak and Bern Tobin, all coming at you, talking about the 5 R's of tillage.
Now, over the years, we've heard a lot about the 4 R's of nutrient management: the right source, the right timing, the right rate, and placement of nutrients. Today, we're going to explore a new concept, the 5 R's of tillage. OMAFA crop innovation specialist Ian MacDonlad and tillage specialist Jim Boak shared the philosophy at Ontario Diagnostic Days this summer. These 5 R's start with having the right reason for tillage. Farmers then have to determine the right depth, timing, speed, and the right tool. Here's Ian MacDonlad and Jim Boak.
So the 4 R's was a game changer for nutrient management, right? It helped us focus on the reasons and how much we're using and when we're using it. And
a system that was easy to remember.
Very easy to remember. Yeah, we locked into it real quick. So why not do it for tillage? Because actually there's nobody training anyone on tillage. It's the wild, wild west out there. We do what we've always done or do what our farm equipment dealer tells us. But there's nobody really focused on the reasons for tillage and the effect of tillage, how it changes the habitat.
And part of our discussion, Jim, was that we need people to be more critical thinking in agriculture about the decisions they're making, not just do what they did last year or what Dad and Grandpa did. It's what does that field need?
So one of the things that makes it difficult is we have more options now than we've ever had in the past. It's very difficult to know which tool you need to use. So the choice has to come through, if you're going to do it right, it has to come through a thought process. Every field needs to be managed differently, and even parts of fields have to be managed differently. So that also creates indecision or inability to come to a conclusion. We know there needs to be a reason, or we should know there needs to be a reason. So that's our first R. Why are we doing this? What is the reason we're doing this? Is it to warm the soil, to get it a little drier, to fill in ruts, to control weeds? Why are we doing it in the first place? Because Mother Nature has already created the seed bed. We just have to take advantage of it or fix what doesn't work. And it might be a timing thing. We might not have time to just no-till or think we don't. So right timing is important in choosing not only the tillage tool, but when we use it. And so that goes back to the reason.
And relative to the soil condition in terms of moisture and such we're talking
exactly.
about.
We need to have the timing correct because we can do so much damage if we get in too wet, too dry, if we're too deep. So that's our next point. The next R is what's the right depth? So often we buy tools and we set the depth and we keep using it at the same depth every year because we don't have the operator training, or maybe don't have the managers training the operator so we know what depth to set. And we can create significant problems with root growth and development by operating at the same depth all the time, or too deep, deeper than we need to. The right speed, there's a huge difference in how different tools can be operated at speed.
And their impact.
And the impact can be tremendous. We can create erosion problems, we can create density problems, we can create crusting problems. So the speed that we choose to run the tool has to match the soil conditions. Otherwise we're going to create more problems for ourselves and wind up doing more tillage. So that brings us to the right tool. if we know the right reason and the right timing, the right speed, we're able to select the tools. And as I said earlier, there's a lot of options, so it's not easy. And quite often, the choice is made not for the right reasons, but by what your neighbors are using or what you're being told by your farm equipment dealer. And so we think then the 5 R's of tillage will help us understand soil habitat and how we impact soil with our implements. And maybe we should never have called them tillage, we should call them habitat management tools.
And the idea is that, when a farmer approaches me to ask about tillage, the first question is, what tool should I be buying, as opposed to what is the problem I'm trying to solve or the situation that I'm trying to create. And that encompasses the timing, the depth, the speed, and that helps us find the right tool for the thing. We're not saying everybody's going to have to go out and buy multiple tools. You can get tools that you can adjust by depth and speed and settings to meet the different needs, but you got to understand what you're after. The other piece of the equation that we were trying to talk to people about was the idea that things above ground we can visualize. So we look behind us, we see corn plants and soybean plants and wheat plants growing, and we understand how that happens. We struggle with what's underground because, one, it's not visible to us. Two is, even if we could see it, it's so complex and at such a microscopic level relative to seeing, plants in the field. So if we think about a corn plant is at 34,000 per acre, 160 per acre for soybeans, 1.6 million for wheat. We can visualize that because we can look at it. How on earth do we comprehend the scale of 1 billion microorganisms in a gram of soil? And the thing is that they're microbes that we can't see, so how do we bring some visualization to it, which is the way we learn things? And so we were asking the crowd here who was livestock producers, and what do livestock need to get to marketable weight and stuff to have a quality product to sell. And they need to have food and water and care and shelter and medicine and protection. Well, how come we don't relate that to our soil microbial population below ground, which is this breathing, living, reproducing, dynamic ecosystem that's continuously changing? So we Jim and I coined the concept of soil livestock. If we visualize that community as livestock, everybody knows what it takes. Even if you're a cash crop farmer, you still understand what livestock need to produce to be a product for the marketplace. And we're just trying to relate that to how we need to care for our soil biological environment under our feet, and help us comprehend that in the context of livestock, which we all intuitively understand.
And it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. We don't see it, we don't hear it, so we don't even think about the fact that without that soil life sustaining us, we wouldn't exist. We all know that what happens with a hurricane goes through your community, it destroys the community, and you have to rebuild your habitat. And if you have the resources, you can build back. But if we continue to beat up on the soil when we don't need to, and if we don't supply the resources for it to rebuild, then that community is diminished or dies. And another word for resources for the community below the ground is roots. That's where they get their shelter and their air and their moisture. So it's really important that when we do habitat management, that we get a crop in immediately, or at least get a cover crop in.
Well, that does it for another edition of RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. I have been your host for this Agronomic Tuesday, Lyndsey Smith. Big thank you to Peter Johnson, to Leta, LaRush, to Merle, Massie of the Dumar Ag Foundation, Leta, of course, of BASF, to Ian MacDonlad, and to Jim Boak and Bern Tobin for helping me out on today's show. As always, if you've got feedback, you can give us a call, 1-855-776-6147, or send me an email, lsmith@realagriculture.com. All right. Cheers, everybody. Have a great day.